You ever notice that situation where sometimes the best problems in life are the ones you accidentally create yourself? And I kind of kick this off with a very specific moment. And what I'd mention in the setup to this would be that at any level of where somebody is in their life, in their business, it kind of comes around to the same issues, kind of comes around to the same problems, just that over time, this is right out of Buddhist philosophy. It's not that your problems go away, it's that your problems become more interesting at times. So I was in this phase from like 2013 till about maybe 2012 to like 2015, where I had a bit of a high quality problem in the business that I run, which is that the gross income, the top level income, kind of stayed the same. And no matter how much I tried to innovate, no matter how much I tried to scale things up and make things bigger and better, well, the result was that that kind of stayed the same. And then over time, there became a bigger issue, which is that here's that gross income, here's that net income, here's the amount that's the top line, here's the amount you actually get to keep. And any bigger innovations, this stayed the same, and this began to drop. And I say this not to put it down in any way, but like this was stalled out like at about 450, 475,000 for the year. And this was stalled out at about a good level, we'll leave it at that. And it's where I realized that there was a bigger issue that I was running into in my business. I mean, you know that feeling where you're looking at exactly what you're doing and you realize that solution's been staring you in the face the entire time. It's that I had not attached a specific kind of value to the work that I was doing. And because I hadn't done it yet, the audience wasn't doing it either. And as soon as I broke through that specific plateau, that's where those that have followed my story over the years, it's continued to grow. It's now morphed into a multiple person team. Yay, Nathan's in the room. And building that up. And it's that over time, we can run into that situation where, people have opinions, people have specific stories, people have different ways of looking at things. And I go to a moment where I was at first trolled online and then attacked online, where it was clear fan of clear communication and language that's used intentionally. Though if you're going to lie about something, if you're going to go on the attack, at least be correct. It's where there was this moment, so Jason actually doesn't see clients. Jason actually doesn't do this work. Oh, it's his wife's family that actually has the income. He's just putting on this thing. And I think Nathan was one of the ones who goes, I visited his office by accident on a day randomly and I couldn't get in. It's like the marathon schedule of such. And there's this negative dialogue of Jason's not actually doing it. He's the one just putting on the show and talking about it. And that could have been every reason to back off. That could have been every reason to go on the defense. Instead, I looked at it and went, well, what if we change the question? The whole purpose as to what got me into this originally with hypnosis was the fact that I've always had this premise that people are much more capable of what they can do in their lives than often we give ourselves credit for. It's that classic story of, what's his name, Roger Bannister, the 4-minute mile, where all of a sudden it was like, no, you can't do that, you can't do that. As soon as someone did, it turned into that moment where suddenly high school kids were doing it. That as soon as we cross over that one specific plateau, so it's where I shut down briefly for a time. And then it turned into, what else can be done from this? And there's a specific piece of language I'm going to share with you, which if you don't like it, good, change it, make it better for you. Because the dialogue that goes in from a very positive place, I have this morbid sense of humor where, stop nodding, Nathan, which is the fascination of negative language used in a positive way. The whole thing around the world, different cultures, different communities, different subgroups of, we have reclaimed that word. It took the one client who came into my office to go, here's my problem right now. And again, quality problems. Here's my problem I'm facing right now. He goes, I have a buyer for my business. They've already set up the paperwork. The payment's already in escrow. Here's what has to happen. This is the perfect timing. He goes, my wife's working on a job that's going to have her over in Asia for the next 3 months. And this is the time for me to become appropriately obsessed with this project. I'm like, ooh, say that again. Appropriately obsessed. Ooh, I'm stealing that one. It's later that week. And it's a guy who I worked with that, when someone calls you up and you can hear they have a smile on their face, And he says, Jason, I have a brand new problem. I'd seen this guy like 3 years prior for overcoming a fear of public speaking. And the whole reason he wanted to get over the fear of public speaking was that he was kind of invisible at his work, where you kind of catch those moments where you know that you're capable of much more, and yet there's something that's standing in your own way, and it's not anything external. We can easily go to that, backlash mode of going, oh, it's this thing, here's what's stacked up against me. Yet the problem is we're the one repeating that story the most. Well, we had worked together. He overcame that fear of public speaking, and I mean, the big smile, you can hear it on his face as he goes, I got a brand new problem. First of all, thank you. I got over that fear. And as a result of that, I got this new job, $60,000 pay raise. I have more control over my schedule. I'm less irritable now at home. However, I have to deal with a team now that I manage, and they don't get along. This guy had 3 teenage sons. He goes, I don't even have to say to them, you don't have to like each other. You just have to get along. He goes, I have to do that at work, which for what they're paying me, I can put up with it. But just sometimes it's keeping me up at night. I know that I can use the techniques you taught me and deal with it on my own. I just know I get a better result when I come to you. How soon can I come in? I point these out because clearly we're in the mode of story this morning. And I point a few things out here. One of the biggest mistakes you can make is to have your audience sympathize and empathize with your story. We find that moment where sometimes someone gets up to speak, and I mean, it becomes, here's the story, here's what I've been through, whether it's positive, whether it's negative, whether it's anything in between. And that moment, and no, this is not the good morning, everybody, for waking up in Jason Linette's happy hour of, don't let your audience care about you. No, it's instead, think about what would happen differently if your story suddenly became the story of everybody in the room. I'm trying to look around to see if anybody was there when something happened in Virginia back in late 2020, which already tells you what part of the story is about. I was bringing David Snyder into town when I used to live up there. He was doing a training, and that's about the time where we had the waves of, hey, COVID is relaxing, and here it is again, here relaxing, and so forth. And suddenly here came the executive order that you could not do events with more than 25 people in the room. And we had David flying in from San Diego. We had another 48 people coming into town as well. And it's the, oh, now what? Look at the shape of this room. What they did was, because the other event at that Holiday Inn Express, we were in a smaller room. There was a ballroom, which they then upgraded us to. They pulled out that wall like that, 2/3 of the way through. They gave us a platform that they didn't make us pay for. And this was my suggestion. Like, what if we do this? We put half on this side, half on this side. Half of my family, l'chaim, we have this audience over here, this audience over there, and David's on this platform and he speaks to the two crowds. The health department shows up and they're taking photos and they're going, this is a great idea. This is perfect. Yeah, this is perfectly in compliance. This is wonderful. Like, okay. So I give you that as the frame because it's a couple of weeks later, and this is like one of the last things I did in Virginia before we moved down here. We moved down to Florida. Actually, 3 years ago, I think this week, roughly. And there's this event that was supposed to be 200 people. Now, at this point, the executive orders had relaxed. We could have 50 people in the room, but this was a conference with like 175 people signed up. And because I shared that story, they went from canceling the event to going, oh, we can do the walls, and let's do this. We have speakers that are traveling in. Some of them don't want to travel in with everything COVID regulations. They reduced the speakers. And so what happened was the 8 of us that were speaking, we were 2 at a time, we rotated the rooms. That way everything was playing the game in terms of numbers. And there was the speaker who I followed all 4 times, had this incredible story, which was, here's everything that I've been through. Here's the events of her life, I'll phrase it my way, which is that she dealt with things that just people shouldn't have to deal with. There were tears in the audience. There were connections being made, and it was pissing me off so much because they came up to her afterwards. And I loved her for this. I loved her for this one thing. Part of her story was that here was this illness that the doctors couldn't explain. Here's how it was manifesting in like different skin lesions. And all she said was, isn't it interesting that at the same time I let go of this emotional trauma, everything healed? I cannot stand here and claim that it's a direct one-to-one correlation, but isn't that interesting? So she didn't draw a line, she didn't cross a line. She didn't go, I did this and that's what caused that. The same as I used to work in backstage production theater where sometimes the actors would be fighting and I'd have to go, hey, remember, part of your job description is the word play. But the moment was she'd tell the story and then standing ovation, which that feels good, right? And then what would happen next? They'd sit back down. The quality of a presentation at times is the measurement as to not only the impact you have on the audience in the room, but how many people in that room then take the next logical step in their journey with you. She had a table off to the side. She had a program that she was offering. By the time we were in the third room, she was running at zero. But I'm making so many great connections. I'm making so many wonderful connections. I met this person. I met this person. I go, what's the next step though? Could I say something that's going to sound like the most heartless, self-centered thing I could possibly say? The audience is connecting with your story, and that's your problem. Grabbed a napkin, I grabbed a pen, I wrote something down and go, in the transition when you leave this part of the story to that part of the story, do this. Her eyes go wide. She goes, oh. Because you know that moment where you suddenly realize that there's one small piece that's been missing, and just making that small adjustment suddenly makes the biggest change. You know, there's a whole thing I talk about of how do we do a message makeover. I have to tell the quick story of the most glorious business mistake that I've ever made. You already know where I'm going. This is about to get dangerous. It's the fact that I had this incredible idea. It's like, okay, so the Work Smart Hypnosis podcast, now it's up to like 430 plus episodes, about 8 years running now. Let's launch a new one. I know how to do this. Let's change the audience. Amateur changes their act, professional changes their audience. So let me focus on a different audience. Let's go now, personal development, bigger audience. Now, I don't want to lean on the H word so much because clearly if they look me up, you know, here's Work Smart Hypnosis, I can't hide from it. Some of you are familiar with Anthony Gailey. This story's not meant to be any sort of name dropping, though Anthony's doing his corporate hypnotist masterclass a number of years ago, and I'm in the room because I was helping to organize that event. Richard was there, Deanna Nunez was there, and he's giving his lecture on, hey, for corporate audiences, they're often a bit more conservative. Maybe don't lean on the H word so much. Introduce it once you have the rapport. And he pauses and he goes, except for Jason, Richard, and Deanna, the three of them cannot hide from the word hypnosis. You need to put it at the front of everything. It's like, all right, cool. So the new project, we need to have a different term. So not hypnosis, not getting into state. Big mistake that people make with storytelling, big mistake people make with their marketing is expert speak. You talk about the things that you are fascinated by. You talk about the things that you're familiar with. The problem is they're not yet familiar to your audience. Anytime you reach a word that your audience doesn't hear on a regular basis, it's an opportunity to spotlight, to reframe, or define. Hypnosis, which is kind of like becoming that computer programmer of your own mind and writing the new code for your own success. The subconscious mind, which is kind of like that part of the mind that drives everything for you when you don't have to think about it. Now we have a frame of reference. Law of attraction, which is kind of like, this is a horrible metaphor. Sometimes it's my job to give you the worst suggestions. That way you can find the better ones, which is kind of like how so often people are trying to deal with life's problems. They're trying to mop up the problems of their life with a wet sponge. And instead, it's about going out there with a dry one so it's more absorbent. Personal development, it's not hypnosis. It's not getting into state, getting in the zone. Okay, so change. You find these modes in our community, in our worlds, where like certain words are trending. So like if it was the 1980s, early 1990s, you were talking to corporate audiences. If you did not use the word synergy, you were not taken seriously. Now, don't. Overused. Transformation is trending. Ooh, transformation zone. The .com was available. There was a person who did record one episode of a podcast, a preacher. I reached out to him and perfect moment. He goes, oh, yeah, I recorded an episode. It was a lot of upkeep and I didn't want to do it. Are you asking for permission? Because like I can give you my blessing. I go, Father, is that serious? He goes, haha. He goes, seriously though, what do you want me to write down on a sheet of paper and sign it to say I won't come after you for this? I record the first 10 episodes getting this thing ready. You know that moment where you get so excited about something and you're just ready to let it go and then suddenly just all the energy drops out? I recorded the episodes. I was in like $12,000 investment at this point, building out all the pieces, building out all the elements. And my podcast editors, who I've used for now like 8 years running, Kate never calls me. Kate emails me, or now we're on the project management software Slack. But she called me. She goes, have you Googled this? I go, yeah. I talked to this guy who had something about it before. I got this. Oh, there's now .zone available as a website. I own hypnosis.ninja.com. Why? Because I wanted it. So I got it, transformation.zone. I have all the other domains. They all point to the right place. She goes, have you Googled this? I go, yeah, it's wide open. I apologize for already saying it's wide open. She goes, click on the image search. Let me point a couple of things out here. I haven't yet introduced myself. Now, yes, I'm kind of cheating in a room like this, as I tend to do at these events. How many of you already know me? Okay, because that's really embarrassing if I ask that, no one raises their hand. And I pointed out now, that was not by accident. Everything you see of mine has been extremely intentional and planned out. It's somewhere between, as Will Ferrell would say when he pretended to be George W. Bush, strategery and, hey, watch this. But the key thing I'm pointing out here is one bigger principle first. Invite your audience to care before you ever ask them to listen. Open up the emails that you receive. Open up the emails from people that you know that are promoting their businesses, doing whatever elements. And what does it look like? Here's what I'm doing. Here's what I'm putting on. Here's what opportunity I've created for you. And it's not yet about the audience. Let's draw the high-tech graphic. By the way, pointing something out here, people have this assumption that a lot of what I teach is highly technical. For what it's worth, the front-end marketing pieces of my 3 different businesses that I run now are actually very simple on the front end. And I have a very glorious back end. No, what I mean by that is the automations we've put into place, all the technology on the client fulfillment, product delivery, all of that. That's where we go nuts. We've created a coaching program where we can predict if someone's falling behind even before they would ever know it. And so building that kind of system, so that's the side that's more complicated. The part over here is actually extremely simple. What I'm pointing out here, though, is that ability to invite your audience to care before you ever ask them to listen. The biggest epiphany I've had in the last couple of years is the fact that messaging is the most important thing. That we fall into this trap of, oh, I need some great headlines. I need some copywriting skills. I need this fancy software. Oh, wait, this software promises it's going to be an all-in-one. It's not. It's this thing over here that promises me that. The key thing that's missing is, first of all, people do business with people, and invite your audience to care before you ever ask them to listen. And I've been intentionally seeding some of the elements of what I'm going to be talking about here today in this opening segment, which is surprisingly one small strategy that I just simply refer to as alignment. And I don't claim this to be this absolutely original idea completely out of nowhere. It's just my specific take on something that we're all familiar with. It's that moment to theatrically break out of the story and connect with that audience. It's that moment to step out of the story and then connect with those people. And the key is there to then let that story no longer just be your story, but instead become their story. Because you know that experience where suddenly you just see this one little element and realize how small hinges swing massive big doors. And that one small shift suddenly makes it so that the rest of the project follows through easier. And Nathan's smirking because I just did it again, which is simply to break out of the story and go for that rhetorical conversation with the audience, to break that fourth wall, theatrically speaking, and communicate to the crowd. You know, he's saying isn't like a theatrical aside to the play. It's where specifically Richard III from Shakespeare, which then became House of Cards. And then, oh, they had to find a reason to have Kevin Spacey no longer on the show. Can we still like the movies where he was the villain, by the way? Like, can we still keep those? Okay, good. And suddenly they had to have the moment where in the final season of that TV show, House of Cards, that was a retelling of Richard III in modern day times. But suddenly, oh, wait, he had some extracurricular hobbies. We need to have the other character now become the lead, and she had to turn to the camera. But the difference is, in most cases, that's used as a storytelling way of continuing the story. This is a break state of the story to let the audience now internalize the experience for themselves. So the key to this is, again, I'm going high-tech graphics here. People have the assumption that a lot of what I do is high-tech. Computer's over there. There's 3 levels of communication in your messaging. I'm going to use the F word here, so careful here. Some people freak out when I use the F word because they go, I don't know how to handle that. Funnel. But not funnel software, not funnel technology. Funnel communication. There's top of funnel. This is where you're speaking in the terms of the problems, the hopes, the goals, the dreams, the outcomes, the desires of your audience. There's now middle of funnel communication, which, by the way, I would say is the biggest fault of this industry. You are all spectacular at middle of funnel communication. And I know, because I used to be the rock star at it, and I had to break that habit. And that was that turning point I was talking about at the beginning here. Middle of funnel is where you're now speaking in terms of the specific methods, the modalities, the specific solutions or solution that they're looking for. So if I was to say, hypnosis is great for helping people to overcome fears, is that top or is that middle? If I was to say that the strategies to help you to overcome your fears are a lot simpler than you would think them to be, where am I now? Bottom of funnel, you're right. Bottom of funnel, though, is where we're getting into that final binary yes or no relationship, which is where they're already basically sold on what you do. And now it's just a matter of those final decisions as to the, do I sign up for the package? Do I do this in the payment installments? So you can see right away how so many people in this industry have on their websites, have on their media, call this number to book your appointment. Click here to schedule your session. Do you see why I would say that they're not yet qualified to make that decision? The one change you can make immediately comes around to the fact that your middle of funnel audience is also going to respond to your top of funnel messaging. You want a really easy strategy to become world-class at this really quickly? Step one, Bob, I love you. Do not use ChatGPT for this. Go to his talk tomorrow, though. ChatGPT, AI, yeah, don't use that for this. You're going to craft a list. Start off with like maybe 20, 30, 40, 50 or so. Craft a list of the questions that your audience is being kept up at night thinking about. Because you know what no one is doing? 3 a.m, they can't sleep. Their partner in bed goes, honey, are you okay? Oh man, I just can't get rid of my limiting beliefs. You know what I need? I just need a mindset coach, said nobody ever. Stop talking like a damn expert. Otherwise, well, the exception is, here's the catch, and this is only a few people in this room, which all good for that. If it's a training offer, if you're communicating to the specific audience, that's where you want to live in that middle of funnel communication. How do you want to stand out though? Top of funnel. Speak about the problems, hopes, goals, dreams, desires of your audience. Because the key is your buying audience is a smaller section of that top of funnel. You are posting online, you're not getting reach. If you're one of those people who said, oh, Instagram has shadow banned me. Oh, Mark Zuckerberg doesn't like hypnosis. That's why my stuff isn't getting spread. No, your content sucks. Your messaging is in the garbage. Change it. Immediate change you can make. Bring it to that top of funnel language first. We have someone that we're working with right now in our consulting that he got this incredible gift. It didn't feel like one, but he did a video, and whatever software he was using that showed the video, he was able to see that here's where the views started. And then in the first 8 seconds of the video, the views did this, which doesn't feel good when you see that, but holy crap, is that an amazing gift? Because immediately it was the feedback, that's not the messaging for your audience. The whole reason why in the last 5 years, on top of my client services, on top of the training company that is Work Smart Hypnosis, clients appeared, was a matter of, I'm on stage, I'm speaking at an event, and I did that highly professional thing of, I forgot what I was talking about. I don't typically do the tight rehearsed thing, but like when sorry, itch again. When I did my TED Talk, damn that itch. They're like, you have exactly 11 minutes. Okay. It's like, how'd that work out? I walked around muttering the same words for 3 months. But then here was this other thing, speaking for 5 minutes. I lost my words. I am freaking out because there's rock stars that are in the front row. Hal Elrod, who wrote the book Miracle Morning, front row. Pat Flynn, Smart Passive Income. When I met him, I go, I stole one word from you. He's my height. We were wearing the same pants. They're in the front row, and I lost my words. And what came out was, it's like that moment where you know your business can change people's lives, but you just don't yet have the right words to inspire people to consistently take action. And it was Pat who goes, was in Colorado, who goes, you know they have earthquakes here? Like, really? No. But I felt this tectonic shift. The whole room leaned in. And if anyone walked in late, I'm just enjoying the fact that some people did walk in after a previous story. Forget that vagina thing. I'm doing this now. I'll make the replay available for everybody. Speaking of which, I'm going to get this. I'm recording it, and I already have the video of yesterday filmed, uploaded, and transcribed. If you want to get instant access to these, I'll pass these around. If you're already on my mailing list, this is a different thing. If you did it from the email, or if you did it yesterday, you're already on there. The place of the top of funnel language, bringing that message to your audience, starting it in their dialogue. What are the things that are keeping them up at night? And this is where you should have a running list. I have it on my phone, which is filming right now, but I have just the Notes app. And what are those common questions that people are asking? What are those common questions that are popping up? The key to this at times is as simple as they can get. How do I overcome my anxiety? Why can't I feel this happiness? Why is my business stuck? And to start to listen to those things, when your language becomes the language of your audience, when your audience language becomes yours, something remarkable happens. And it's part of the fact that right now, human-to-human interactions are trending. If anyone's worried about what's happening with AI and the rush of stuff that's happening online, I would say that it's actually going to serve you in the long run, because we're in a space right now where, said with love, other than the people who are doing it well, Bob Martell speaking at 9 a.m. tomorrow, other than the people who are doing it right, we're getting this rush of just garbage that's littering the web even further. It's what I call you're blasting the content confetti cannon. You're blasting the stuff out to the world that, like confetti, hits the ground and nobody picks it up, nobody reads it, nobody watches it, and ultimately nobody buys from it. One of the key changes is, first of all, start that dialogue in that audience's language. And think of it this way. The same way that we know to utilize within a hypnotic session, the same way that we know how to utilize. Every story I've told today is absolutely true, because research has proven this, and I've verified this with about to become Dr. Richard Nongard. When you lie, your pants catch on fire. Scientifically, that's been proven. However, there's a key thing that I've been doing this entire time, which is how do we shine that spotlight on the specific parts of the story that are the already existing language of that audience. So it's not that I'm telling you to change your story. It's not that I'm telling you to confabulate your story. I'll tell a quick reference here that I love this. I've attended Ken Guzzo's Stop Smoking program, and someone goes, oh, I've got the great idea to promote this thing. Yeah, I'm just going to tell people this is how I quit smoking. Don't, because again, science has proven fire pants. So to look at it from the angle of, it's not about changing the story, it's about adjusting where we shine that spotlight. So far, what have we covered? Talking in terms of the language of the audience. And this is where I'm going to start from the mindset of the audience. I'm going to start from their internal dialogue. And the goal is to start to create these connections. Where are the pieces of an event that I've been through or a client of mine has been through that then illustrates these points, that then creates that connection from one to the other? So this is not the sake of just getting up and telling the story because we tell the story. This is not the sake of, I've been to the events before where there's a range of quality speakers and it's like, oh, this is the one who's going to yell at us now and try to motivate us, but I'm laughing my ass off because that doesn't work on me. Here's the person who, I was in an event once and I don't follow sports at all, which makes this even better, but it was that the fact is they somehow in the scheduling had two different former NFL people. I'm like, oh crap, here we go. What? I finally got it. My life fell apart. I lost everything. Here's how I regained it. Same story. Like, did they plan this ahead of time? To look at it from the angle of, again, top of funnel, start with their dialogue, and it's where now we're starting with their story. We're starting with the audience's stories, their connections, their questions, and we're bringing that to ours. So I keep two running lists all the time going. One is, what are those questions? What are those statements? What are those top of mind, top of funnel language pieces that my audience is repeating over and over? It's a lot simpler than what you would think it to be. Then from there, I'm collecting stories. The key here, though, is at the origin of it, set aside any expectation of what you're going to do with it. What are turning points? Has anybody here scaled Mount Everest? Okay, good. Anyone here ever won the Super Bowl? Okay, good. Anyone here ever feel held back because you're like, I don't have that incredible story. I can't do this. Yeah. The fastest way to break rapport with your audience is to tell that story that they cannot align with. There's a comedy bit that didn't turn out so well because it turned out, oh, that's actually her. Allegedly. Ellen DeGeneres did a comedy special called Relatable. And the opening routine, if you get a chance, I think it's on Netflix. It's actually really, really funny in retrospect. But it was that, oh yeah, since I've done these shows, since I've done all these things, I understand all of you. Like the other day, Madra, our maid, I mean, she just showed up 15 minutes late and we had to put her in the cage again because she wasn't behaving well. And then that was the day that, Portia broke the Fabergé egg, and she's doing that on purpose just to make fun of that bit. Collect those stories. And what I would say is emotionally detach yourself from the story. I'm a fan of one specific comedy riff. I don't care for his show most of the time, but it's Bill Maher who does the real-time show, used to be Politically Incorrect on ABC. He has this one routine that I do love the premise of. I don't know if this is a fact, but it sure sounds like it's true. And I've heard these phrases over the years. Apparently, it became infamous a number of years ago when I had Igor Ladahosky on my podcast, and he said, well, Jason, when you're working with a client, the change occurs when you're speaking to the client, when you're delivering the hypnotic language. The transformation occurs in the silence. And it became infamous, apparently, that I then made fun of that. It's like, dude, that just sounds so good. I mean, we can't prove that, though, but it just sounds so good that you're like, yeah, it does. I heard an interview like 2 weeks ago with Bryan Cranston, which, if you're familiar with him, he did this TV show called Breaking Bad, where slowly they turned the dad from the Brady Bunch into Scarface, and the whole goal was, let's make it so you don't know if he's the hero or the villain anymore, and you're still cheering him on, and you're uncomfortable about that. I don't want to ruin anything, but the end of that show, my opinion, he faked his death. Malcolm in the Middle was the sequel. Same character. It makes it so much better if you think about it that way. But Bryan Cranston in this interview said, because he's now not just acting, he's also directing, that it's the actor and the director's role to make decisions as to the emotional landscape of the piece. Because if the character cries, they cry so the audience doesn't have to. And if the character holds back the tears, it's so the audience can shed those tears. Damn, that sounds good. I don't know if that's a fact. It sure sounds like it's true, though. And I point that out here because step away from the emotional landscape of your own story, briefly. And it's key here to start to look for where are the connecting points? Where are these points connecting? The one change with the woman who was telling the story, the skin lesions went away. To her credit, she put in the disclaimer, I can't prove that as soon as I got over the emotional trauma, here's where everything else sorted out. The one thing I added in there, isn't it interesting that sometimes in your life you realize that everything's connected? And sometimes it's that one small change that you've known for all these years it's time to let go of. And the moment you do that, everything else suddenly becomes easy. And you realize you don't have to have this problem anymore. And that's when she's back to the story. In that one moment, her story became the story of everybody in the room. Everybody connected with something very specific of their own. Before that, people were coming up to her. And again, biggest flaw sometimes of story is that they empathize and they sympathize with it, which means they're taking the part of it that isn't necessarily there. Now, this workshop is being presented in the mindset of story with business. So if you are a professional storyteller, take some of the pieces of this and ignore some of the others. It's my job to give you the strategies and let you pull the pieces out of it there. But it's that simple moment of breaking that fourth wall, bringing the statement to the audience. And there's some little tricks to this that we can play at times, which comes around to playing with shifting perspective. If there's ever a moment in a story where a quote can come in. Earlier when I told the story, his name was Tom. He gave me permission to say his name, Tom. By the way, the story I tell about that guy, I overcome the fear of public speaking. Ask yourself also, what are the common objections? What are the common concerns? What are the reasons why people might not buy from you? And just lock this in your mind. Telling does not always equal selling. If instead, my definition of influence, persuasion, would be the fact if it's guiding people along a journey from which you can predict the next step. There's a reason why I tell that story consistently, because I'll do it again. Calls me up. I got a brand new problem, new job, $60,000 income. I can use the techniques you taught me before, and I know I can do this on my own. I just know I get a faster result when I come to you. I'm no longer irritable at home. What beliefs have I knocked down of the audience? One, does stuff actually work? By the way, steal this whenever someone does that. What do you do for a living? Hypnotist. Oh, does that work? Well, what do you do? Accountant. Does that actually work? What do you do for a living? Police officer. Oh, I don't believe in that. Makes it more fun. But that story knocks down a few belief systems. Also, to throw in something a little bit more high-tech here, there's a specific number that's part of that story. This is called a price marinade. I have now floated the idea of $60,000, which then when they hear my price and it's not $60,000, damn, that's a bargain. There's a story that I often tell, which is that my wife has a real estate business. I have my businesses, and we have separate business accounts, but all the personal stuff is together. And this has never been a conflict around money. There's times where like I've signed up for a program, she signed up for things. But the day that I was going to sign up for something that was going to be $26,000 for an entire year, because it was also like a bit of a done for you thing. They were going to be building assets for me. They would be working on things with me. It's like, this one, I should probably sit her down and have the conversation. And I prepared. I walked through, that moment where like you're so excited to share something and just you've got to share that excitement with somebody else. Like for me, it was all about the outcome. I was completely pre-sold on it. I knew it was going to pay out. It did. And I walked her through it. I presented the case as to how if I do this and it bombs, it wouldn't destroy us. It would be kind of annoying. You could use it against me for a couple of weeks, but then we'd move on. But like we have it. They have this financing offer too, so let it ride and let's do that. She goes, okay, I believe you. Fast forward the story though. We're at an event that I went to last year, and how much was this event? Oh, it was included. Included in what? Oh, that inner circle mastermind I'm a part of. Oh, how much was that? 50,000. Did you tell me about that one? No, after we proved the first one to work, I stopped asking. It worked. What am I knocking down the beliefs of? I'm telling the story. Do you see how I just crushed I need to talk to my partner about this? Did I just also reframe the story of how much does this cost and instead what does this earn me? So ask yourself, what are the common things that you're running into? And those are not always, let's get rid of the O word, objections. They're concerns. My biggest rant at one point about 10 years ago was that there was this dialogue around, oh, if people call you up and ask you how many sessions, how much, they're just price shoppers. They're just curious. They're looking for a bargain. They're looking for, like, what the hell else do you ask when you call a hypnotist? It's the fact that they don't yet know what they don't yet know. We have to bring them into that middle of funnel communication so that then they're qualified to hear that bottom of funnel language there. But look at all the different things you run into. And again, positive language, negative language used positively. What are the conflicts? What are the problems you run into? And if you're not knocking those belief systems down in advance, it's your fault that the business isn't growing. It's not the fact of this is what's going on, this is what's going on, this is what's going on. It's the fact of asking, where is the audience right now? There's a statistic of two statistics of mine. I have a trademark in hypnotic language hacks. Can't say them though. One of them is in my business, and if you've seen that I'm doing a post-conference at HypnoThoughts this year, it's your hypnotic passive income machine. I have not had a $0 day in my business for 7 years running. Now, sometimes it might be the $4 sale, the $7 sale, but there's a very clear dynamic that changes though. When someone crosses that threshold and goes from just being a opt-in to being a buyer. The other statistic I'm cautious about ever talking about, the worse the economy, the more my business has grown. And not because blood-sucking vampire, no. It's because I listen. There's two things that every business needs more of. Conversations, which I'd also phrase as conversations. I'm lecturing right now. This is still a conversation. Feedback. What is the tone? The way that we can sometimes appear that we're reading the minds of our audiences. Hey, I got my start in hypnosis, actually working in backstage production theater. I was working backstage. I had a hobby of doing magic. I paid my way through college doing magic. Close-up sleight of hand magic at like a theme park and such. And I got interested in hypnosis. I saw a couple of stage hypnosis shows over the time. And in that journey, though, it became, I want to do this. So I forgot about this at one point. Like, oh, wait, I need to highlight that. My first like 50 or so clients were the actors who were smoking, the dancers who were smoking to stay thin. So nowadays, someone calls up and goes, I'm afraid of gaining weight if I quit smoking. I'm like, yeah, I got this. Those are my people. However, the global story changed. From 2007 to like 2011, and it might have been the specific audience that I was seeing, the story was, they're so expensive. I had this guy who was about to do a business trip to Australia. And by the way, catch that? I had this guy who was about to do a business trip to Australia. He's capable, yeah. I am speaking my dialogue to a quality audience. I used to get up and tell the story of being the broke entrepreneur, the broke startup, who was hanging the images on the wall in my first office, and they were not evenly spaced because I couldn't afford paint. When I told the story of being the broke startup, what did I attract? Sorry, Victoria. What did I attract? The broke startup. When I started to talk about the quality problems, another turning point was the day that I was already known as the business guy in a lot of this space. But it's a specific moment where I was trying to build out some other things and more money was going back into the business than coming out. And it's getting to be 4 o'clock and my client, the last one of the day, is running late. And I'm the one apologizing to her because I need her to come in. I needed her money that day. Oh, no, it's fine. Don't worry about it. I'm texting home. Hey, I'm going to be a bit late today. And because I needed her money. And I looked at that. I mean, marathon schedule at the time, like something's got to shift. I call that elevation. That's either a problem that the quality audience has, or the people that may be over here who are not yet in that situation. I'm going to segregate the audience into three places by doing that strategy. There's the people who are, sorry for this, in the ditch and want to stay there. Everything you say is magnetic in nature. It's going to draw in one audience, it's going to repel away another one. And not to be the cynical butthead this early in the morning, there is an audience that identifies with the pain, identifies with the problem, and I want to push back against those people. You hear this dialogue sometimes of, oh, the client needs to be at threshold. They need to be ready. If they don't say on a scale of 1 to 10, they're at an 8 or higher, don't take them. Well, one, you just made up that scale. And two, hypnotic suggestion is about influence, persuasion. Best moment ever with a client. Stop smoking intake. Yeah, but you're just going to persuade me today. I held up my notes. Yeah, I'm going to take all the shit you've already been saying to yourself for 10 years and feed it back to you, but this time it's actually going to stick. And I'm kind of lazy, so I'm going to use your words mostly. He's like, that makes a lot of sense. I go, I know, right? 2007 to 2011, they're so expensive. 2011 to 2017 was, I called it secondary health. Not like secondhand smoke, not like, oh, I'm concerned about the people around me. They're now in their late 30s, 40s, 50s, and now it's getting real because some of their friends are dropping dead. Oh shit, I got to do something about this. That's what I mean by the secondary health. 2017, even up until now, with a global respiratory pandemic in the middle, health doesn't pop up as much. I'm just spending all this time dealing with something that I don't even enjoy anymore. I am the expert at hiding this. There's so many people who don't know that I smoke. So you see how I start to know some things about that audience. You're that person who has got everything in your life together. It's just that one thing. And I'm going to start from that as the angle. If you ever hear me say, here's this fact, don't be impressed. I stole this from my friend James. He has 5 Tony Awards, but you would never know his name, and they never aired his awards on TV. When they take a play, when they take a book, and they turn it into a musical, they have the problem of taking all the different scenes and turning them into songs. And then sometimes it turns into the game of, hey, we can't make this scene work, but we need it for a transition. So can you write some dialogue? Can you like take these 5 pages of the script and just truncate them down? And he writes the book of the musical. And like he's done some big name shows. What actually pays his bills? You know, all those Hallmark Christmas movies, Lifetime television for women movies, Pokemon and Power Rangers. He writes those. They have a bookcase in their writing room with the classic works. They have a bowl of darts on the table. All right. Oh, cool. Odyssey by Homer. Say stop. Okay, cool. Oh, it's the scene where Penelope is sewing the funeral shroud. She's convinced that he's still alive, but she's unraveling the funeral shroud every day, so that way she doesn't have to marry one of the suitors. Okay, so let's take the purple Power Ranger, and there's only so many story arcs. So to start to look at what are those consistent story arcs, where is your audience, how can we connect them? My best advice to you is to become that collector of stories. I'll give a quick mention here that passing that around, I'll send out the resources of this probably today because it's actually pretty quick to send those out. We'll send the transcript out too. I'll pass these out as well for those that might not have picked it up. I do a program online where basically I just give you things that are ready to implement in your business. Guessing sucks. Use what works. It is a monthly program for the fact that we keep adding more stuff to it every single month. And I'm doing a thing where you get 2 months free by doing that while you're here this weekend. So it's not that I would say plagiarize. It's that I would say listen to your clients, open up that perception, and ask yourself not what the story is, but instead what the story represents. Because you know that moment where suddenly you realize that the way that you look at telling stories will never be the same again? We just did it again. Thanks for joining me this morning, bright and early, and we'll see you in a bit.